There are so many interesting, horrifying, or downright weird things in this big world of ours.
Each week, we'll bring you a new true crime story that has little to no coverage in English.
Let us do the translations so you don't have to.
I'm Victoria.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Petra. Welcome to the podcast Translation Murder. Today it is my turn to introduce a interesting criminal case. And this is from Japan, as I promised. It is from the 1970s and happens in a mountainside of Japan, in a prefecture called Nagano. Probably many of you might know it from the Nagano Olympics. I think there was Winter Olympics many years ago.
Okay, yeah, I'm not one of those people who knows that. Oh, yeah, sure, that's where some of the Olympics were. I know some people know all of these, but
Yeah. I thought that could be the global point of knowing the name.
yeah, probably it is for, I guess, maybe even most people. Just look it up.
But as you can already, if you happen to know that there was Winter Olympics, then you can figure out that it's a very snowy area. There's big mountains, lots of snow, and this happens in the area called Karuizawa, and it's famous for kind of being this kind of summer vacation spot because it's on the mountainside and the Japanese summer is very hot. People from the cities go spend their summer holidays there in the nice kind of not so hot mountain cabins and lots of fresh air and nature around. So I would say, if you say Karuizawa for any Japanese, they immediately know, at least around the capital area, what it is about. It's not too far away from Tokyo, like maybe 2-3 hours by car. This incident is called Asama-Sansō Incident, or in English, the Asama Mountain Lodge Incident. And I actually saw a documentary of this while I was in Japan, and I thought that this would be interesting to introduce. One of the special points of this was that the whole police operation around this was the first in Japan that was filmed live. Like you could actually see everything happening live in the television. So
Wow, okay.
it's
a very well-known case in Japan.
Yes, I would say so. There's also a movie made of it. So I would assume that quite many people know the case, even if it's from the 70s. And it was a hostage case. That's why there was this police operation and filming of it happening. But today, I mostly going to explain about the background, what led to this incident, because otherwise it's just too random. The villain of the incident that took total 3 lives and wounded 27 people was the villain was the Rengo Sekigun, which is in English United Red Army, or also known as URA. So when we talk about Red Army, it means extreme left, as you can figure out.
Yeah.
And as the background, in Japan, 1960s was the peak era for leftist movements, or the so-called New Left, that were these leftist groups that had kind of ditched the old left, which would mean more of the Communist Party of Japan, that is a democratic political party in the parliament. But this New Left was more about, demonstrations, violence, kind of changing the whole society.
It was more radical. I think
Yes.
that's often the case with these kind of new or from a party when there's a smaller one that decides that, okay, these original guys are not extreme enough for us. So then, yeah, the newer ones are usually more radical, I would say.
Yeah. I think this is not like a Japanese concept. There was a new left in Europe that was also radical in the 1960s. So this all is part of a global movement. But of course, in Japan, it has its own peculiarities. So there was lots of student protests, as I think there was also in Europe in the 1960s. And especially the era from 1968 to 1969 was called Daigaku Funsō. It translates like university conflict. And it was happening across campuses and led to like closing several universities for a while. There was lots of sources telling, like, some say it just started from the university students' general unhappiness, like how they were taught and how much there was this like dictator style leading into universities and students weren't listened enough. And also like one specific thing was this like free internships for the medical university students that they weren't happy about, and all these small things and the general distrust led to lots of violent protests and blockades on campuses. And in these, not all of the students were part of any extreme left, but they played a big part there. And there were several different leftist organizations, but I'm not going to go into the whole history of these. But anyway, just to know like that this was the really heated era of leftist movement. And it took a couple of years. There were these violent protests and demonstrations. But then when we come to the 1970s, it kind of calms down. Like people lose interest. And also because they were kind of violent, they lose support. Even because there's always, the people who are kind of like, yes, the cause is good. Yeah, go for it. But when the group starts to do worse and worse things, like kill and harm people, the kind of not so extreme supporters start to draw back.
Yeah.
So that was happening when we come to the 1970s. Anyway, our villain today, the United Red Army, was actually formed only in 1971. So kind of after the peak era. And they merged from two violent groups called the Red Army Faction and the Revolutionary Left. They have actual longer names, but I don't think it's super relevant for this case. Well, they were the United Red Army that was merged from these two groups, was a militant organization with the intention to disturb the Japanese political system to enable communism to emerge in the state. Some examples of their extreme and violent nature was that they would, for example, there was cases where they murdered members who left the group. So yeah, the United Red Army would murder members who deserted the group, and also they had this practice called sookatsu, which is also known as self-criticism in English, in the Marxism-Leninism context. And this practice is in, or at least was, in many communist groups, and I think also in like communist states, that it basically means kind of a session where when one would criticize themselves for not being a like good follower of the ideology. It could mean just that you kind of, in front of everyone, you're like, oh, I didn't believe Lenin enough, and I have not practiced communist. Like, I don't know, when I read about it, it just sounds like this cult in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
What
Yeah.
What's the incentive of like saying this, that I was not good enough? Like, what happens when you're publicly saying that I was not good enough, but I strive to be better? So the others are like, yes,
Yeah.
great job, or
Yeah, basically that kind of, that's you. criticize yourself and then you change your ways. You start
Okay.
to, do better communism, whatever that
Okay.
is. But yeah, I didn't go into too deep of it because there seemed to be a lot of this happened, well, surprisingly in China and other communist states, at least in this era. So kind of to get rid of the people who, I don't know, don't believe in communism for real. But then again, I think it's just a theater. Like if you do it well enough, anything can go. And it's not necessarily really self-criticism. It can also be like the members basically bullying you in these sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It kind of reminds me of like this Synanon. Have you heard about this like group? Well, okay, so basically it was like
I've
this
heard this name, but does it
yeah.
have to do anything with QAnon?
No, it's from I think also the 60s and 70s, but it was like this narcotics kind of like anonymous thing, and they were the ones that basically started this whole it's a bit different obviously, but it was also a bit culty, and they had these radical groups where they would have these yelling sessions, and each person would be in the middle of like the circle, and then people would like yell at them or berate them and belittle them, and then that was kind of the start of these like youth camps, where the people would send their troubled kids to these camps to get better, but they're actually just like
To be
abusing the
yelled at.
children. So it was kind of
helps.
so this kind of reminds me a little bit of that. But yeah, what's up with the
How is
60s,
it spelled?
70s and yelling circles? It's supposed to get like out aggression and then also just be like, I don't know.
It's like the opposite of these like laughing sessions, or do you
Yeah.
know when like people come together and then you just kind of forcibly start to laugh, and then usually
Which is
by the
fucking
end
weird
everyone is like
too.
actually
Yeah.
laughing. Yeah, it's very
But at
weird.
least it was positive sentiment there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably meant to be like cathartic in a way.
Mhm.
But
So
yeah, I
how
mean,
is it spelled? What you were saying, Laura?
I
Synonym?
think it's Synanon. I'm not actually sure.
Okay.
Let me
With
check.
S. Okay.
Yeah, Synanon. Yeah. And it used to be known as Tender Loving Care. It was like a religious movement, but yeah. Okay, it was created in 1958, and yeah, it was originally it like had a pretty good backing and idea, but then it just went fucked up, and yeah, like
sounds very
most
tender
religious
and
movements
loving.
and cults do. So yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, kind of reminded me a little bit like a milder version of this. But like, you're not a good communist. You fucking whatever. You're a right-winging whatever asshole. You're not a good communist. Like, I just can't imagine like yelling at someone like, yeah, you didn't do this because you're not a good like, you don't read Lenin enough. Okay.
I mean, at one point it becomes like a group psychosis thing that you just reinforce this idea in each other that this is totally normal. We should, this is the way to convince people to belong even more.
Yeah.
And I do think that even nowadays and also in the past there has been these in like religious context quite a lot, like where you're doing sin and the way you live is not the way of God and blah blah blah. Like, I don't know, my image is that, like, for example, Mormons have had this kind of thing at some point, and anyway, I think there is this kind of
it's like this
group
Mormons and
psychosis.
Jehovah's Witnesses usually like they kind of like basically throw people on the outside of the group. So they like, if you've done something, then okay, you have to sit in the back of the church for weeks or whatever while you atone. You can't be part of the group, but you still have to come to the services, and you have to kind of be like this, I don't know, social leper basically, to be let back in the group. And it's also, I mean, both of those are cults, so I'm not
this brought back some traumatic memories from my brought back some traumatic memories from my high school.
Oh god.
I'm not
Okay.
gonna go into that now. There should be a different podcast.
No, fuck.
Okay, now we have the
Yeah.
few more next episodes. The education system of Hungary.
Yeah. what the
Yeah, I don't
fuck?
know. This was a special case, I think.
Okay.
Ugh.
Yeah, but if we go back to the Sokatsu sessions of the
Mm.
United Red Army, they were like really bad version of this. Like they would include beating of the people who were self-criticizing, so the others would beat them. I don't know where's the self-criticism of that, but there was cases where they would be beaten to unconsciousness.
Unconsciousness, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I had trouble even writing that to my memo, so maybe I should have just written
That's one
it
of the
in
words.
Finnish how it's pronounced.
One of the words that I always kind of have to think about how it's spelled.
Yeah. Yeah, so in a way, this is a bit like an incident inside an incident, but there's this incident of his self-criticism that kind of leads to the main story of the Asama Mountain Lodge incident. So in the beginning of the 1970s, as I already mentioned, the momentum of the leftist movement was kind of over. People were not supporting them as they were too violent. There had been lots of arrests, so the police had been doing their work, and like generally, it was not also like the media was not so interested in them anymore. So many of the groups had started to hide the mountains because I guess the situation was that their faces are being known by the police, so they kind of need to stay out of the public eye. So they had these mountain hideouts, or agitpunkts, as they would call them. They had all funny Marxist terminology in the leftist movement in Japan. So also the United Red Army had its mountain hideout, and they were hiding. There wasn't many of them, like not more than 20, if I gathered it correctly. At least in the mountain hideout. I don't think they had lots of like just randomly hanging members, that most of them were in the mountain hideout. So were the leaders, Tsuneo Mori and Hiroko Nagata. Both were the respective leaders of the previous groups that had merged. So now they were kind of the leaders of this one group. And they were very desperate. So they decided to start this kind of ultimatum of the self-criticism, which maybe would be better to call a purge. So they would kind of just, they had this, I don't know, this sounds so psychotic in all means, but they had this dream like, okay, now we will start this final revolution and attack. So we have to get rid of all the not real believers. So
from their own group.
From their own
So
group,
get rid
which is like
okay.
20 people. So
Yeah.
this is the stupidest purge ever, but I don't know. I don't think they were really in their right mind anymore. So this case that happened in the mountain hideout has its own name. It's called Mountain Base Incident. So this was basically torture of the people who were victims of this self-criticism. Some of them were beaten until they died. Some of them were tied to a tree outside. And well, this was a mountain hideout and in the middle of winter, so they froze to death. And total 12 members died in the end. And these people were basically like students, not any older. They were all very young people, which also maybe explains that they are maybe easy to manipulate and like do what they are told, and all this like hard to fight back when you're young and when you're kind of into the ideology. But yeah, it took some time until for example, the parents of the students knew the truth, what had happened to them.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's only a few people left in the group,
Yeah, basically.
like less than 10. Mhm.
Yeah. So I think it was like the leaders and some less than 10 people who were there still in the hideout. And this whole purge happens from December to February, the December of 1971 to the February of 1972. This was the incident inside the incident. So already, I would say this is a murder of 12 people. Like if they're beaten to death and left outside to freeze to death.
Yeah.
So,
Fuck.
yeah. Anyway, the kind of next phase of the story is that on February 16th, the police force finds the hideout and they arrest the leaders and 6 members. Oh yeah, I did have the numbers here.
6 of the 8 members.
No, sorry. So there was 11 members plus the leaders still left.
Okay.
And 12
Okay.
had died. So there had been total 25 members before they started to purge.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah,
Not so
I
important.
don't know.
Anyway, we know the scope. So the leaders and 6 members of the United Red Army were arrested. However, 5 members managed to escape from the hideout. And the members are aged from 16 to 25. So they're all, I think the oldest one had already graduated university, but otherwise they were all students. And the one who was 16 was like a little sibling of one of the university students. So you don't go to university that early in Japan. And they were armed. So they managed to take guns with them when they escaped. Why this group had guns to begin with was that they had bought them from another extreme left group who had gained them in a gun shop robbery previously. So this is also just a detail to tell how little they had any they didn't care about the law. They wanted to do like a armed revolution. Okay, so the 5 members, the leftovers of this United Red Army, escape on foot, and they're in the mountains. It's February, so they walk for several days in the mountains until I don't know if they were like what they were doing during the night, if they found some kind of cottages or what was the way they managed it. But on 19th February, they arrived to newly built mountain lodge area in Karuizawa called Lake New Town or Lake New Town. So it's not a translation, it is called like that because it's cool to give them English names already in the 70s.
Okay.
So yeah, that's where they arrive. And yeah, the interesting detail why I even mentioned why it was newly built was that it wasn't in the maps. They kind of came out from some tunnel or something, and then they were like, "What? Where are we? What is this?" So
perfect hideaway.
So they found one mountain lodge, Satsuki Mountain Lodge, that was empty, and they decide to go in and take a little break. They shower and have or bath or whatever, and they have food and rest a bit. But not for long, because soon the police arrives there. So they're catching them up pretty quickly. Apparently they kind of along these couple of days, the police has some idea where they were heading to. So 2 policemen come to the lodge and they ask them to get out, but that's not what they're going to do, and they shoot at the police, and then they start to escape them by a vehicle, and exciting police pursuit follows until they manage to shoot the police so that the policemen both are wounded, which will of course slow them down, so the fugitives are able to escape from these two police officers, and then soon they will find a mountain lodge called Asama Mountain Lodge. And this is not like a cottage, but closer to a hotel where several people are lodging.
Yeah, so basically kind of like a ski resort lodge thing, right? Kind of at the base of a mountain, you know, where people are going to go to ski, right? Or
something like that. I would understand that there was, I think you can ski somewhere there, and there's like ice skating and that type of snowy things that you would do on a holiday in February.
But the building itself, was it, because you said it's kind of like a hotel, so it's something where people can stay overnight, or is it more like just
I can actually, so it's kind of, how would you describe it, like on the hill, and there's several floors, and the entrance is from the upper floor, but I don't think it lodges too many people, like it's not a big hotel or anything.
Yeah.
And
But it's definitely bigger than a cottage, so it's kind of a like a big house, kind of, not really or I don't know, like a whatever. Sorry.
Yeah, but kind of to get the idea, because this is the main stage where everything will happen. So for the luck of the fugitives, all the guests of the lodge are out, and also the caretaker is out. And this also implies that there's not too many, guest rooms. And according to some sources I found, it says that all the guests were ice skating, which would maybe imply that there was some kind of like, at 1:00 we have an ice skating event for everyone in the lodge. Let's go there, kind of thing. Not that everyone just, decided to go skating simultaneously, but who knows?
Yeah.
And the only person in the building is the wife of the caretaker, Yasuko Muta. She's 31-year-old, and, well, a young woman there alone. And there's 5 armed extreme leftists coming in. So they take her as a hostage at gunpoint and promise not to harm her as long as she doesn't try to escape or cause any other trouble. Then they barricade the building. This is as far as I thought that we should go this time, because after this, the kind of detailed incident begins, as they are having her as a hostage. And the police is soon arriving, because, well, they just shot 2 police officers on their way to this place, so they are not... they will be found very soon.
Yeah, they're probably still following them, or other like members of the police are still following them, even if it's not the same 2 guys.
But I think it...
And I suspect that...
I was just going to add that the caretaker who was out, he did arrive there before the police, but when he notices the barricades, he's like, oh shit, and kind of understood what's going on and doesn't try to go in.
Yeah, I wonder how this will play out, because you mentioned in the beginning that 3 people died and 27 were wounded. So I thought that maybe the people who were out ice skating, they return before the... and then somehow, before the police arrives, or let's see what happens. But yeah,
and these guys don't really care even about authority, like shooting cops and stuff. So I think it just shows a general lack of care for life, I would say. So I don't know, just telling her that, oh yeah, we won't harm you, is kind of empty empty promise in my mind.
But On
So
the
yeah, I don't think anybody's
yeah,
safe
on the otherwise,
but
I do think
unless you're a
yeah, and
communist.
that's like one thing where I do think that the most dangerous situation is for the police because these people are from a group that wants to do a revolution, like an armed revolution against the state.
Yeah.
And police is basically
Hmm.
part of the state. So I would say a civilian is in a better
Yeah.
situation compared to the officer. So probably they think that this caretaker's wife is just, a random person. Maybe she's not against communism, who knows?
Yeah, but I think also in these, they just kind of, the
Yeah.
mentality usually goes like, well, any casualty, as long as it's for the greater good,
Yeah. And
Then
Yeah.
in reality, I think in these cases, it's after a while when it gets so extreme, and now in the end, it's just this really small group of people. It's not really about the cause
yeah.
anymore. It almost feels like it's just being violent for the sake of it, or just because we are these people who are against, I don't know, everything else. So it's not. I mean, obviously, this is, I don't know, not the way to change the
Yeah.
system that you're killing a
Hmm.
bunch of innocent people and just, yeah.
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 But yeah. So in the next episodes, we will go through how this situation kind of evolves. And also, as I mentioned in the beginning, this was one of the, I think, the first incidents that was aired live in television, like that the media was there present. What a police operation! So there's lots of interesting details. So that's why I thought it's maybe better to take to our next episode, as we had already quite a background story this time.
Yeah, but it's good to know about the background in more detail because, yeah, it adds a lot to understanding the story.
Also, if
Yeah, but I guess this wasn't famous. Like, this wasn't famous anywhere else in the world, really. Like, I've never heard of this personally. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, obviously, I wasn't alive in the 70s either. So at least I don't think so, unless there was like some past life regression thing. But yeah, I don't think I was alive back then. So yeah, it's kind of like maybe my parents. I could always ask them, like, did you ever hear about this crazy thing that happened in Japan?
I would assume that it was, in the news outside Japan. But like, okay, if you read the news in the 70s and you happen to remember, then yes. But I don't know how much this is historically brought up outside Japan.
Yeah, or even if it was kind of more internationally well known, then I haven't heard any discussion about it recently. So there's no like Netflix documentary about it, but apparently there is a
Yeah.
Japanese documentary and movie and
Yeah,
everything.
the movie is
And I just
from.
wonder
Yeah,
because,
sorry.
like, no,
I
yeah,
was
you
just
go. Yeah.
going to mention that the movie is from 2002, so quite recent. I mean, 20 years ago. But
It's not even recent anymore,
No, it's not.
unfortunately.
but not
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I was just gonna
immediately
say
after
that
the
Yeah.
yeah, true. Yeah. I mean, yeah. 30 years and 20. Okay, yeah. Yeah, but I was just about to say that maybe also in the States, because like communism, was such a huge thing that maybe it would have made more news in the States because they were so anti, like the Red Scare kind of stuff going on. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so sad that
I mean,
communism is
yeah.
also one of these things that works really well in theory. It's kind of
On
a
paper,
nice
yes.
idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then it's
Yep.
just, it doesn't work
There's
when
always some fuckers who
actual
go
humans are
ruin it for the
involved.
rest of us.
Yeah, it works as long as
Yeah.
no human is involved in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Human nature
Yeah.
ruins it. Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, there's lots of like I think the Red Army of Japan did some like terrorist attacks and stuff. So like militant leftist movement it's a big part of the modern Japanese history. So this is only one incident that happened, but maybe someone who is more interested in that kind of history finds this interesting in that context also.
What about the guy that you talked about in one of the news tangents, I think? Wasn't he
Yeah.
also, the guy who was recently, they found that, well, he died in a hospital, and it turned out that he was this like fugitive who has been on the run for I don't know how many decades. Wasn't he also part of some extreme leftist
Yes,
movement?
and he had taken part in
Mhm.
these terrorist attacks.
Mhm.
What was the group? Yeah, he was Satoshi Kirishima, and the guy. Oh yeah, it was the anti-Japan East Asia Front. So armed East Asia Anti-Japan Armed Front is the English name. Yeah, that was a
Okay.
Japanese
Yeah,
new
so
left terrorist
one of the other
organization.
ones.
Yeah.
And that was in the
No,
60s,
this was actually
70s as well, when they were active.
1972 to 1975. So it's kind of after the. I guess
Okay.
that after the peak era passed, it was only the most extreme guys who are still doing this, and everyone
Mhm.
else is like, okay, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not an expert of the history of communism in Japan, so these are kind of like just random stories from here and there and from history books that I read. But if you talk with Japanese who have lived in that era, they usually have a story or two to tell. Like, husband told that his father told to always have a nail clipper with him in case he would get tied up somewhere. But he was like, I don't really understand the context, of why tied up. Was it that the students would sometimes do something really random, like, hey, are you a communist? I think you are not. We will tie you up. Or I don't know. So it was not the most steady era to be a student, I guess.
Mhm. Well, I mean, this is just something that shows that it's kind of the reality, or it's part of common people's lives as well, that there's this potential threat and you might be held hostage, or I don't know. It's of course not something that probably happened every day, but just it's a realistic threat.
Yeah. I mean, it would be interesting to hear more stories. I think I've heard lots of stories, but now to put them in this context, what happened? Yeah, but that's my story for today. Is it a
Thank you.
climax?
Excited to hear the rest next time.
Cliffhanger, literally, because it's
So people have to wait 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
have fun waiting.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for bringing this to us, Petra. And thanks for listening to this episode, the people that are listening this far. And yeah, follow us on Instagram, like and subscribe to our podcast, continue listening, and we'll be back next week with Petra's part 2 of this case. And then after that, it'll be my turn. So yeah. Thanks again, Petra. Hipparalla.
Moikka.
Bye.